Hello there, and welcome back to the Chap's Guide. If it's your first time here, my name is Ash, and I'm your guide through the topics of men's style, self-development, and personal grooming. And those are the things that we tend to chat about here. Now today, well, I bring you a celebration video today, because on October the 18th, it is International Necktie Day. Here we go, I'm wearing one especially for the occasion, as I often do. And to celebrate that event, I've made a short series of videos all around exploring the necktie, its origins, best choices that you can make, and some thoughts and observations about this wonderful thing. Because is it not the necktie? It's been that humble thing which we've taken for granted for so long. Yet, when we think about the best dressed men of all time, of all eras, there's one thing they've all had in common, and that's been one of these, the necktie, adorning the collar of their shirt. So it's an important and integral part of the stylish man's wardrobe. Even in this era, where we find the degradation of men's dressing becoming more and more apparent in society. Even in professions where men would have, without a second thought, worn a tie 20 years ago, now people are going to work with an open shirt collar and no tie. So let's explore the necktie, celebrate and enjoy it here in these short series of videos. So as I often like to do when I'm thinking about products which men wear, I like to look at the origin story, because it helps me to understand the part that that item plays in our wardrobes. And with the necktie, it goes back a long way. So the origin story, like so many of them do with men's style, starts with the military. And it takes us back this time though to the 1600s, the 30 Years' War, which took place between 1618 and 1648. And there were a number of belligerent nations involved in that war. It wasn't any great set piece between two different countries. There were a number of wars involved, but one important one was France, because the French were involved in fighting the Spanish and a number of other, antagonists. And to help them fight that war, they took to the employment of mercenary forces. And one of the mercenary forces that they engaged the services of were the Croatians. And the Croatian soldiers, mercenaries, had their own distinctive way of dress, which obviously was originated in their own country. And one of the distinguishing features of their outfits were the neckerchiefs that they wore around their necks, which were very distinctive in colour and fashion. And over time, of course, as the Croatian mercenaries went back to France, they were seen out in public wearing their distinctive attire. And the Parisians, very fashionable people of the era, identified those neckties they were wearing, liked them, and started wearing them themselves. And as time went on, they became more and more fashionable. Even members of the French nobility and royal family took to wearing these neckties. So what did they call them? They had no name. Well, they called them Croats, after the Croatians who originally were seen wearing these ties. And as time went on, that Croat word became aberrated to cravat. And of course, cravat, still the French word for a tie. We tend to think of cravat as a slightly different neck adornment today, but the cravat is where it all started, with the necktie. Now, as time went on, as so often things do, evolution took place. And that original Croat, the cravat, went into the Industrial Revolution. And originally it was nobility who would wear these things. But as so often is the case, the common man likes what the nobility and the royals were wearing, and they take a version of it for their own wear. And back then in the Industrial Revolution, people wanted something which was comfortable, could be worn all day, so it didn't have to be really tight around the neck. And it evolved to scarves, to neckerchiefs, to bandanas. And eventually, of course, it arrived at the item that which we today kind of refer to as the long necktie, the three-piece material necktie. Now, most neckties that we think of today, like the one I'm wearing, is made of three pieces sewn together, cut at the bias, sewn together, and it gives us the necktie. Now, the first time that was seen in the men's style world, it was in New York of all places, in 1926, when a chap called Jesse Langsdorff put together the first long necktie and brought it into the fashion consciousness of the American world. And to him, we owe the necktie that we all wear today. Now, right after its introduction, the necktie became very popular in the UK back in the 1920s, and it was first seen or worn by people again in the military. Because people started to wear what we refer to today as regimental ties. So all of the different regiments in the British military would all have a tie which was distinctive in colour to their own regiment, and these were presented in the form of stripes on the tie. Now, an interesting fact is that ties relating to the British regiments all have the stripe running from left to right. Now, to delineate between British and American ties, the American stripes run from right to left, so that there is a distinct difference if you look at ties from Britain and from America. So you can always tell the origins of the tie that a person is wearing. And that's really where it started, and it grew from there. As time went on, it wasn't just the military, it was different schools which adapted the tie to show that you were from a different school, from boating clubs, rugby clubs, sporting clubs. And the tie became a very distinguishing feature which could identify somebody's status in life, what their social activities were, and to a degree their profession as well. And that still permeates today through British society. Different ties let you know that somebody has been in the military, been in a certain regiment, they belong to a university or a school, and it's an interesting way of seeing camaraderie in place between different people. Now, as time has gone on, fashion has dictated changes to the ties that we wear. Not just the colours, but the actual physical tie itself. Now, originally, ties were actually quite short. They would not even go down to a gentleman's waist, because trousers were worn much higher up. They were much higher waisted trousers. So the long tie would be a lot shorter than it is today. But as time has gone on, of course, and our clothing has evolved, the tie has adapted. The width of the tie has changed considerably as well. Originally, and as is the case today, most ties would have been between 3 and 3.5 inches in their widest point. Now, way back in the 1960s, 70s, 80s, skinny ties became more fashionable, and they would have been about only 1.5 inches. Today, you know, the 3-inch tie is considered to be the norm. You can have a slightly slimmer tie, or even slimmer again. I'm wearing a slim tie which is 2 inches in length, but it's a woven tie, again showing that different textures and different materials have been adapted into the landscape of ties as time has passed by. And you know, they've all been embraced in their own different ways. But today, you know, most ties around about 3 inches in length. And it's a great, of course, opportunity for a gentleman to bring colour, charisma and passion into his dress for the day. Because, you know, if you think that most men wear the corporate uniform, the charcoal grey suit like I'm wearing today, a plain coloured shirt, a light blue like I'm wearing, or a white, the tie is your opportunity to bring that punch of colour into the clothing that you're wearing, to coordinate it with your pocket square, to make it something which brings character to your clothes. So the tie has a really important place to wear in everybody's clothing. So when should you wear a tie? Has it changed over the years? Well, yes, of course it has. People wear less ties today than I think they've ever done in the history of gentlemen's couture. And that's because of the informality of the era that we're living in today. So when do I wear a tie? Well, I always wear a tie generally when I'm wearing a suit. Not absolutely all the time. I mean, if it's a hot day and you know the environment that you're going into is not a tie wearing environment, I make a decision based on that. But generally speaking, if I wear a suit, my default setting is I will wear a tie. Same goes for a blazer. Now the navy blazer, that catch-all, fantastically versatile item that a man can wear, it can be dressed down of course and worn with an open collar, but it's in its element when it's worn with a tie of some type. And the classic regimental tie was, as pictures in my mind of going hand in hand with that navy blue blazer. So another natural environment for the tie. Well, when else could you wear a tie? Slightly differently, you can easily wear it with a bomber jacket. If you want to dress it down a little bit, go a little avant-garde. But probably the least formal element of tie wearing I would go for is to wear it with a sweater, a V-neck sweater or a crew neck sweater. It can be pulled off, a little bit less formal, but it's still, a little edgy, but it can be done. I wouldn't wear a tie on its own, just with a shirt. I wouldn't walk out of the house just wearing a shirt and tie unless I had a garment which added an element of formality to those clothes. I mean, it's different if you go to the workplace and you take your jacket off and you walk around all day in a shirt and tie. That's different. You've got the jacket, the formal edge of your clothing there. But I wouldn't leave the house just wearing a shirt and tie. It's not really the done thing, and I've never done it, but it's up to you. There are no such thing as style rules. All rules can be broken. Consider the situation and the circumstances. And that's really where the tie should be thought about. Consider the context of the situation that you're going to. Is it going to be, in a workplace where informality is de rigueur? That way you wouldn't wear a tie because you would stand out from the herd that little bit too much. So always remember the context, and remember, the same as all style rules, it's in the where, the when, and in the who is the situation you think about. Are you going to wear that item? And the same goes for the tie. And the thing is, at the end of the day, the tie can be easily removed and put in your pocket. So if you go to a situation that you're worried about being overdressed, wear the tie, and if it's not fitting in, take it off, slip it in your pocket. It's far better to do that than to go to a situation not wearing a tie and to find that everybody else is wearing one, and then you're in a bit of a spot, because how do you find a tie? So you're in a better position there if you take one in the first place. But think about the tie, where it fits in with your clothing, and think about the context. Now, in future videos, we'll be talking about what ties to own themselves. I've already said I'm wearing a woven tie today. Where would you wear that? What situations? Should you wear silk? Should you go polyester? We'll talk about that in the future video, the next one along in the series. So until then, I hope you've enjoyed this video in celebration of the gentleman's passion for neckties. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one, where we'll talk some more on the same topic. Until then, take care of yourself, look after yourselves and your families, and we'll meet again very soon back here at the Chaps Guide.